Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to tune in before I get started. I want to wait till a couple of people tune in at least, and then we'll get right into it. There's a lot of different things that I want to talk about tonight. So I hope that you all can rock with me. I may open it up so people can actually join the live stream depending on how things turn out. So I want to thank everyone who is subscribed to my channel. I want to thank you for supporting my channel throughout the years. I want to thank you for liking my videos. And I want to thank those of you who have actually donated to this channel, either through the super chat or directly, and those who have supported my campaign in the past to become a city councilman here in Baltimore. I truly appreciate your support. And I'm also calling on you all to support me with the art program that I plan to have. I plan to have an art show on October 9th at the Mansion at the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. So I hope that you all can join that event, attend that event. I will post a link in the chat right now so that you all can RSVP. The event will be in Baltimore, Maryland. I plan to have an online option available so that people who are not in Baltimore can view the exhibit online, but I encourage those of you who live in Baltimore and surrounding areas, those of you who live within a reasonable driving distance, I encourage you all to come out and support my art show. This art show will be focused on an issue that's very timely right now, and that's the issue of police brutality. It will be a visual artist demonstration against police brutality, and I hope that you all can support it. And I want people to let me know if you have any issues being able to hear the audio for this live stream. I would appreciate it if you leave a comment letting me know if that's the case. While we wait, I want to encourage people to subscribe to this channel. If you're not subscribed to it, encourage your friends to subscribe to this channel as well. Also, I want to encourage you to like my Facebook page, New Possibilities. Before I post videos on here, usually I post articles on my New Possibility Facebook page, and I encourage you all to like that page. I plan to have some exclusive content over there soon. And I also plan to do some private videos here on YouTube. And if you're interested in receiving those videos, links to those videos, just let me know. You can email me at newpossibilitiesblog@yahoo.com, and I'm going to type the email address in the comments so that you all can have that information. So it's newpossibilitiesblog@yahoo.com, where you can email me your email address and just let me know that you're interested in receiving links to private videos. And I plan to post those soon. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so I posted my email address. Shout out to Bonafide 1970. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, great. My audio's coming through loud and clear. That's great. So there are a lot of things that I want to talk about today, and hopefully I'll be able to get to them. And what I may do is later on, I may split this video up so that people don't have to listen to the entire live stream in order to focus in on the particular subject that they're interested in. But I heard about this horrible incident of police brutality, and I had to get on here and talk about this. And what I'm going to do is share my screen with you all and read some excerpts from this article from CNN, and then show you all a video and then provide my commentary. Just bear with me a second. Hold on one second. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm having some issues sharing my screen, so if you all can just bear with me a second. Can you all still hear me? If you can let me know in the chat, I would appreciate it. Okay, so you can hear me, but for whatever reason, I'm having problems sharing my screen. It says not responding. Okay, so you all can hear me. I may have to log out and come back on. Just bear with me a second. Are you all able to hear me? Okay, I'm going to assume that everything is fine. Hopefully you all can hear me. Shout out to everyone in the chat room. I appreciate you all tuning in. If there's any issue, please let me know. So let me try this again. Okay, so this should work now. All right, great. So I'm going to go to this article from CNN. It talks about this situation involving Daunte Wright. So in this article, they talk about how this Minneapolis police officer grabbed her gun instead of her taser during an arrest and shot and killed a 20-year-old unarmed black man. And the police are saying that it was an accident. You had the police chief issue a statement, and I'll get to that in a second. And it says that the details and the body-worn camera footage were released on Monday by the police in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. And it says the officer who shot and killed Wright was identified Monday night as Officer Kim Potter, according to the press release. And it says that Potter had been with the Brooklyn Center Police Department for 26 years. Just bear with me a second. So this article goes into detail about what happened. It talks about how he was, Wright was with his girlfriend on Sunday afternoon. He was driving to his older brother's house when the police stopped him. And they say that it was because he had an expired license plate tag. And the police learned that there was an outstanding warrant for this brother. They proceeded to try to handcuff him while he was standing outside of the car. And then he proceeded to get in the car and try to get away from the officers. And then you had this one officer point a gun at him. And even though she was pointing this gun at him, she kept saying taser, 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 and then she proceeded to shoot him. So, you know, this goes into some more details. You know, if this says that according to his mother, the police pulled him over because air fresheners were hanging from the rear view mirror. That's what they claim. You know, that's what his mother is saying. And so again, as I said before, this officer pointed the gun at him, said taser, taser 3 times. And then the officer fired the gun. And then the officer said, holy shit, I just shot him. And then you had this police chief basically say that the shooting appeared to be an accidental discharge that resulted in the death of Mr. Wright. And basically they're saying that based on the conduct of this officer, you know, that she was shouting, you know, 3 times, that it was she had a taser, and that was consistent with the training, according to this report, according to this chief. And after this happened, of course, you had people protesting. And the thing that's so important about this situation is that this is happening at the time when Derek Chauvin is being tried for killing George Floyd. And the George Floyd case is taking place like only 10 miles away from where this incident occurred with the brother Wright. So, of course, people were outraged and people took to the streets and they protested and stuff like that. And, you know, people were arrested. There were some incidents that took place. And I will post this article in the description box so that you all can read it for yourself and read all the details. But what I'm going to do now is play the video of the incident so you can see it. And I don't know if there's audio. Hopefully you can hear it as well. Hold on, let me try to turn it up. You may not be able to hear it, but we'll give it a shot.
As I watched the video and listened to the officer's commands, it is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet. This appeared to me, from what I viewed and the officer's reaction and distress immediately after, that this was an accidental discharge.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. So they're claiming that this was an accidental discharge. And this whole situation is absolutely ridiculous. It's absurd. And at the very least, this is an example of gross negligence. I mean, there's a clear difference between a taser and a handgun. You know, the taser is usually a bright color, like bright yellow, so it's easily identifiable. It weighs far less than an actual gun. And usually, you know, according to the articles that I read, the taser is on a different side than the actual gun. So this woman has no excuse at all for shooting this brother with a gun instead of a taser. And part of me questions whether or not this woman, in fact, was intending to use a taser. If she was intending to use a taser, this has to be one of the most incompetent police that have ever been in a police department. How are you going to be on the police force for 26 years and not know the difference between a handgun and a taser? So now this brother is dead over an encounter that basically stemmed from an expired license plate tag. That is outrageous. I mean, it is crazy that a brother ends up dead over something like that. This is a young brother, only 20 years old. Life taken, snatched away, snuffed out by this officer who at the very least was negligent. And right now you have the police chief basically making excuses for this woman. And I hope that Dante Wright's family sues the hell out of the city and out of the police department for this horrible tragedy. And I hope that there is justice in this case. I hope that charges are filed against this officer for killing this brother in cold blood. This brother was unarmed. He didn't pose any threat to anybody. He was not attacking the officers. He was not harming the officers. There is no excuse for this brother to be dead. And, this is just another situation that we see time and time again, where another young black man is killed by police. Another young black man. And so what we're going to see is the cycle that we usually see, where you have a black man killed by the police, and then you have outrage, temporary outrage. You have the hashtag, where a human being, a human life is reduced down to a hashtag, is reduced down to a trending subject. Not even, really viewed as a human life, just something to talk about, something to rally around. Meanwhile, a family is devastated. So you have the hashtag phase, where you had the popular hashtags going around. And you have all the images of the brother, of the victim of police brutality. And then you have these lawyers come in, these parasitic lawyers who get rich off of the suffering of black people. These lawyers always manage to get a settlement where they end up taking like at least a third of the money that's intended to compensate the family. And after the family reaches some kind of settlement, often what happens is they are hushed, they are silenced, they're given hush money so they can shut up and fall in line and tell the people who are outraged to calm down and relax. And meanwhile, often what happens is the police officer that murdered the person ends up walking. They end up getting away with it. Rarely are charges brought. And when there are charges brought, these police get away with it. Because too often, the court system gives these officers the benefit of the doubt. Too often, the system is set up in such a way that it protects the people that take black lives with impunity. So this is what we have. And as I watched this encounter, all I thought about is I wondered how things would have turned out if the brother made different decisions and all that kind of stuff. But I'll be perfectly clear. Too often what we do is we shift the burden on the victim, and we essentially blame the victim for what happened. And we essentially buy into the respectability politics argument where we say if he did this or if he did that, then he wouldn't have been killed by the police. This is not about what black people are doing. It's about a system that has been designed from day one to oppress and kill black people. It's a damn shame that here we are all these years later, and we're still dealing with this issue of police brutality. This is an issue that the Black Panthers dealt with in the 60s. This is an issue that Martin Luther King and all those other civil rights protesters dealt with. It was the police that attacked people who were simply trying to exercise their rights, simply trying to be treated as human beings in this country. And it was the police who were used as an instrument of oppression. And unfortunately, here we are all these years later, and the police are still a tool of oppression against our people. Every other day you hear about another Black man, and that's who primarily is being killed. Black men killed by these police. And all we can do is walk around and march and all that kind of stuff, and it still continues. What will it take for this stuff to end? You know, this happens at a time when this George Floyd case is going to trial. When that pig, Derek Chauvin, is on trial. So it's no wonder that people are outraged and they're taken to the streets. Because it's like, I mean, you know, and I want to go back to this whole thing about what the brother could have done differently and all that kind of stuff. He could have, you know, he could have complied and all that kind of stuff, but the burden is not on him. There was nothing that brother did that justified that pig's action. So, you know, this is just another outrageous example that we see, and I don't blame the people that take to the streets, that take matters into their own hands. I will never condemn them because this system is an oppressive system. People have tried to have faith and hope in this system, and, you know, and time again, this system has proven that it was never designed to help or to benefit Black people. Time and time again, all these police that walk after killing Black people. I mean, how many more examples do we need to see before we finally wake up? So I don't blame those brothers and sisters that are taken to the streets. Instead of condemning them, we need to condemn the system that results in situations like this. And, you know, this is connected to this Derek Chauvin trial, as I mentioned before, because this trial is taking place like only 10 miles away from where this brother was shot and killed, 10 miles away. And here we have a case that under ordinary circumstances should be an open and shut case. It should be an open and shut case. But we got people talking about how this is a difficult case, how it's a challenging case. We had this charade of a trial going on. How much more evidence do we need of murder in order to convict this man, Derek Chauvin? You had all these law enforcement experts. You had police from his own department saying that his conduct was not reasonable. You had the police chief saying that his conduct wasn't reasonable. You had a detective saying that Derek Chauvin's conduct was not reasonable. You had other law enforcement experts saying that what he did was not reasonable. But yet and still, you got people that are actually defending Derek Chauvin. This tells you how little Black life means in this society. And, you know, the issue of causation has been raised as well. And so far as the prosecution has presented their case, they have presented all these medical experts who have testified that George Floyd didn't die from a drug overdose. He didn't die from some health condition or some problem with his health. He died because Derek Chauvin kept his knee on his brother's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds while this brother was screaming out, pleading for his life, crying for his mother, saying that he couldn't breathe, saying that he had pain all over his body. While he was doing that, this beast, this pig, kept his knee on his brother's neck, despite pleas from bystanders who were telling him over and over again to let off of his brother. You know, crying out for this pig to have some kind of sense of humanity, for this pig to have some sense of mercy. But instead, despite all these pleas from the public and from a dying man, this officer had his knee on his brother's neck. For all that time, even when this brother was unconscious, even when the brother wasn't moving anymore. And the whole time this brother had his hands cuffed behind his back. There was no justification at all for what that stinking pig punk police officer did to that brother. But yet and still, he has this defense attorney rationalizing this nonsense. And people actually defending him. The medical personnel had to get this officer off of George Floyd in order to put him on the cot. I mean, how heartless can somebody be? How more callous can anybody be than that? That man is not fit to serve in anybody's police department. He belongs behind bars. And yeah, so, I mean, the one thing that I'm afraid of is that, you know, this defense attorney will bring on these witnesses, you know, bring on some experts to try to argue that George Floyd died from a drug overdose or from his underlying health conditions. I'm afraid that if they bring on a whole bunch of experts to counter what the prosecution has said, it may create some reasonable, quote unquote, reasonable doubt in the minds of some of those jurors. And it will be a tragedy if there is no justice in this case. If one of these jurors decides, well, you know, there's a reasonable doubt, that would be an absolute tragedy. Because as many people have said, not only is Derek Chauvin on trial, but the American criminal justice system is on trial. And if they fail to render justice in this case, I'm certain that there will be rebellions in the streets, not only in Minneapolis, but there will be rebellions all over this country if that happens. You know, because what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to say that George Floyd died because of all these health issues. They're going to try to say that he died from an overdose. They're going to talk about how he took a lethal dose of methamphetamine mixed with fentanyl. They're going to say that he was already saying that he couldn't breathe when he was standing up, when he was in the police car, when they were trying to put him in the wagon or whatever, in the police car or whatever. They're going to come up with all this kind of stuff to sow these seeds of doubt. And they're going to criminalize and demonize that brother so that people have less sympathy towards him. And unfortunately, we have our own people who have contributed to the demonization and niggerization of this brother, George Floyd. We got some of these bitter, butthurt, angry Black women on here who have taken on the task of serving as mouthpieces for white supremacy by making, you know, by demonizing this brother and saying that Black women shouldn't support him, and you know, bringing out all this garbage about this brother in order to make it easier for a jury to not have any sympathy or any concern for the loss of this brother's life. And one of the things that there are a couple of things that I want to highlight and with respect to this trial. One of the most powerful moments or impactful moments during the trial so far is when that older Black man who was one of the bystanders testified. And just seeing this old Black man break down into tears was like one of the most troubling things that I ever saw on TV. I mean, it made me sad, but even more than that, it made me angry. It made me outraged to see this older man broke down that much to the point where he had no choice but to cry out in pain. And then another thing that's very troubling is they keep playing the video over and over again, and I understand why it has to happen in order to submit that evidence to the jury. But every time I hear this brother cry out for his mother, every time I hear this brother cry out that he can't breathe, all that does is fuel the fire of rage within me. It sparks my anger, and it makes me understand, like I really sympathize with those people who said to hell with this system. The people that take to the streets and take matters into their own hands. And I just hope and pray that there's justice in this case, because all hell is going to break loose if this cop gets away with killing his brother. So yeah, I had to share that story with you all, and I'm going to look at the comments real quick, and then there's a couple of other stories that I want to talk about as well. So I want to thank people for tuning in. If you're not subscribed to this channel, I encourage you all to subscribe to the channel, to support the channel. I appreciate your support. Also, I want to remind people that I am having an art show on October 9th at 3 p.m. It will be in Baltimore, Maryland, at the Mansion at the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum. It starts at 3. I have posted the link to the invite on Facebook. I'm going to post it again for those of you who are just tuning in. I encourage you all to RSVP as soon as possible. I want to have a good turnout, and the exhibit will actually be up for a month. So I hope that you all can come through and support that. And some of my art will be for sale at the event. And the event is going to focus on this issue of police brutality, the very issue that we're talking about right now. Okay. Yeah, so so I agree wholeheartedly, Bonafide. Bonafide said it was not an accident. This wasn't some rookie. She was a 26-year veteran, and she most definitely knew the difference between a handgun and a taser. Exactly. It's hard to believe that somebody that's gone through all this training, somebody that's had all this experience, have no clue the difference between a taser and a handgun. I don't buy it. In the words of Jay-Z, I don't believe you. You need more people. And it's just a shame that you got this police chief who's standing behind this woman, supporting her. And I know that they have to conduct their investigation and all that kind of stuff. And right now she's just on administrative leave, which is nothing but like a paid vacation after killing this brother. 20-year-old Black man killed, snuffed out like that. Yeah, this whole situation, it just makes me so angry, man. It's like, how much more of this shit are we supposed to put up with, man? How many more hashtags will there be? And when will we finally be able to end this problem of police brutality, man? We're fighting for the same things that people were fighting for back in the 50s and 60s, man. And I just think that now is the time for Black people to step up our militancy, man. You know, we got these impotent slogans today, man. These slogans that don't have power behind them. You know, like hands up, don't shoot. You know, the slogan, I can't breathe, man. We need empowering slogans. Slogans that are so Black, that it's too Black and too strong. They can't be co-opted and adopted by others. An uncompromising, bold movement, that's what we need today. Just like you had the Black Panthers, man. The Black Panthers had the courage to meet force with force. We need bold, courageous leadership. We don't need leadership that's compromised. We don't need leadership that is for sale. We don't need leadership that's trying to chase clout and trying to chase money. And that brings me to the next subject that I want to talk about in this live stream. And it's this article about a Black Lives Matter leader. And when I saw this article, I was very disappointed, to say the least. So what I'm going to do is share my screen again, read a few excerpts from this article. So you had this article on the Grill that talks about how this Black Lives Matter founder purchased a home for $1.4 million. And now people are calling for an investigation. And this founder's name is Patrisse Cullors. And so this article says that the head of Black Lives Matter of Greater New York is calling for an investigation into Black Lives Matter co-founder, Patrisse Cullors, over $1 million real estate purchases she's made in recent years. It says that she reportedly purchased 4 high-end homes for $3.2 million in the US alone. And then it talks about how she even purchased a property that's in a mostly white area in Los Angeles County for $1.4 million. This article goes on to say that Black Lives Matter reportedly brought in $90 million in donations last year. And then questions had emerged about how she's getting paid by the organization and how much she has contributed to charity. So you have this leader in New York, Hawk Newsom, who's calling for a probe into her finances. The article goes on to say this, and this is what he had to say. He said, if you go around calling yourself a socialist, you have to answer how much of your own personal money is going to charitable causes. It's really sad because it makes people doubt the validity of the movement and overlook the fact that it's the people that carry this movement. So it says that Black Lives Matter Global Network responded to the concerns. It says that she received a total of $120,000 since the organization's inception in 2013 for such duties as serving as spokesperson and engaging in political education work. And it says that she did not receive compensation after 2019. And I find that hard to believe. And it goes on to say this, to be abundantly clear, as a registered 501c3, Black Lives Matter cannot commit any organizational resources toward the purchase of personal property by any employee or volunteer. Any and it goes on to say, basically any claim that that's the case is categorically false. And then it goes on to defend her against these allegations. I'm not going to read all of this. But I just think that it's very troubling. And it talks about how in addition to that one property that's worth like $1.4 million, she owns another property, this 3.2 acres in Conyers, Georgia, that has an airplane hangar on it. They purchased that property for $415,000, excuse me. And this article talks about how she has this book, and basically is suggesting that she made a lot of this money from her book. They call you, the book is titled "They Call You a Terrorist: A Black Lives Matter Memoir." And then it talks about how she paid for another home for this like $500,000 in Inglewood, California. And then she bought another one, a 4-bedroom home in South LA. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just share my thoughts about this this situation. Like right now, like we don't know exactly how much money she got from her book. I think that there should be an investigation. I fully support this call for an investigation of her use of money and all that kind of stuff, her acquisition of all these properties and stuff like that. I mean, the bottom line is this whole thing stinks. This whole situation is just not a good look for Black Lives Matter. And it's calling into question everything about Black Lives Matter. I mean, these are people, this woman professed to be some kind of Marxist, claims to be about socialism and stuff like that. How can you claim and profess to be about socialism when you're living like this? When you're living in a $1 million mansion, when you have all these other properties and all that kind of stuff? How much of your wealth is going towards the movement that you helped create? How much of that money is going to local communities that are trying to organize? How much of that money is going to families that have had their lives shattered by the loss of their loved ones? Those are very real questions. And I think that people, I'm glad that that brother in New York is raising this question because there's something horrible about that. I mean, it creates the appearance that this woman is like a parasite on the movement, literally getting rich off of the suffering of Black people, off of the killing of Black people, getting rich off of it. There's something sick about that to me. It's like she's like a parasite or a leech if these allegations are true. I mean, and people should not be able to leech off of the deaths of young Black people. They shouldn't be able to get rich off of that stuff. They shouldn't be living in some fancy mansion at the expense of the people, at the expense of all those young people killed by the police. When you have these different units of Black Lives Matter asking for resources, saying that they're not getting the resources that they need to organize in their communities and stuff. You will recall that Michael Brown's father and one of the local Black Lives Matter affiliates or community organizations was calling on Black Lives Matter to give money to them, to help them organize in their community in Ferguson. Meanwhile, you got people living like this. This woman got all these houses, getting all this money off of the suffering of Black people. And it's an absolute disgrace, man. It's like that organization has lost its way. You're supposed to be about the people, not about enriching yourself and your own pockets. This should be about saving Black lives, fighting to end police brutality and racism. It shouldn't be about you enriching yourself. It shouldn't be about you acquiring all these material possessions, even though you claim to be a socialist. This whole thing completely undermines the legitimacy and the credibility of the movement for Black lives. You already have these right-wing pundits attacking Black Lives Matter and attacking organizers. They label everybody as Black Lives Matter. Anybody out there organizing and protesting in the streets, they just lump them under the label of Black Lives Matter. And it delegitimizes the movement that people are a part of. This fighting a real issue, a movement that's fighting to end police brutality is called in question because of these types of actions. So I hope that I hope that there is a thorough investigation. And even if that investigation were to reveal that she legitimately got this money from book deals and all that kind of stuff, it still stinks. Because the question is, how much of that money did you give back to the people? And why are you even getting rich off of the suffering of Black people? So yeah, I mean, I had to get on here and raise this issue. And, there are a couple of other points that I want to raise, addressing this particular issue. This is no different than those pimping pastors who pimp the congregation of his wealth. While you have people struggling to make ends meet, people living paycheck to paycheck, paying their tithes so that their pastor can live in some mansion, so that their pastor can drive some fancy car, so their pastor can wear all these expensive suits and floss all this jewelry and stuff. That's how this Black Lives Matter thing is starting to look. Much like how you got these scam artists on here, these fake pro-Blacks that hustle Black people, get rich off of Black people, and then don't want to have nothing to do with Black people in real life. Here you got this woman, there's some kind of political activist. Instead of being with the people, she's living in some exclusive white neighborhood. That stinks to me. There's something wrong with that picture to me. And it just causes me to question everything about Black Lives Matter. It's a damn shame, man. It's a damn shame that somebody like this is undermining the movement, unfortunately. Yeah, so I had to mention that. It was just very disappointing seeing this article. So I'm going to look at a few more comments before I go on to the next story. Yeah, it's just very disappointing. And this just reminds me of what Tamir Rice's mother was saying about Black Lives Matter and Tamika Mallory and Ben Crump and all these people. And she even called out Black Lives Matter. I mean, this epitomizes what she was talking about when she criticized these people. Because, and I know that Ben Crump does good in terms of getting money for families who have suffered the loss of loved ones. That's a good thing. But you can't tell me that he's the only attorney in the country qualified to represent families of police brutality, it does create an image of being an ambulance chaser. If every single police brutality case, you're the face of the attorneys representing the families, and you leave behind all, I mean, other than enriching yourself and breaking the family off a couple of dollars, you're not creating any kind of substantive change in policy or anything like that. It causes people to question your motives. And it's just a shame that the movement, a movement that started out as a grassroots movement, has just become so co-opted, so watered down. It has become the cup of coffee that Malcolm X talked about when he said, coffee with all this cream in it, is no longer hot. It no longer wakes you up. It puts you to sleep. And that's what has happened with this movement. This Black Lives Matter movement has become a white movement in many ways, where many of the people at the demonstrations, and I don't have anything wrong, there's nothing wrong with allies and stuff like that, but the movement has become co-opted and taken over. It has become so commercialized that the slogan Black Lives Matter is losing its meaning. It has become a slogan to sell goods and products to people. It has become a slogan that's used to promote corporate interests. That's what has happened. That's why all these corporations are on board with it, because they see a chance to get a greater share of the market by pandering to the movement, by co-opting the movement and adopting a lot of the language and symbolism of the movement, and by showering money on organizations, they gain influence over those organizations, and that organization and that movement becomes diluted, just as Malcolm X talked about with his analogy of the cup of coffee that's integrated with cream. That's what has happened. So you got this watered down movement. And it's just a shame, man. We need genuine activists. We don't need people that are trying to sell products, that are just about, self-promotion, that are just about, trying to enrich themselves instead of being about the movement. And unfortunately, that's what it looks like here in this situation involving Black Lives Matter. And there was one other police brutality situation that I wanted to talk about, but what I'm going to do is do that as a separate video. It's a situation involving, this black man is a member of the military, and this how the police abused him and treated him with utter disrespect. So I may do that. I'm going to probably do that as a separate video. I'll probably do that probably maybe sometime tomorrow. Yeah, so I'm going to move on to this next couple of stories that deal with hip hop. It's totally different subject, but I had to talk about this, and it's I just didn't want to break it up and do separate streams and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to go right into the subject. So let me share my screen. And again, I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and encourage your friends to subscribe as well. And just to give you all a heads up, I probably won't be posting videos after. I think I may post that video tomorrow dealing with the police officer, or I may post it as an article here on YouTube and just talk about it that way. But after that, I probably won't be doing regular videos for about a month because it's the month of Ramadan. So I'm trying to stay focused. I probably will do one video about the verdict in the George Floyd case because it will probably happen relatively soon. But other than that, I probably won't be posting regularly. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up for that. All right, so let's share the screen. All right, so this is Kid Cudi. He's one of these, he's a big time rap artist. He was signed to Kanye West's label, Good Music, and he's had a lot of hits and all that kind of stuff. And so this past Saturday, he was on Saturday Night Live, and he did a performance wearing this dress right here. And after this performance, he responded to critics, because of course people are going to criticize this guy for wearing a dress. So he responded to critics, and he was basically saying that he was paying tribute to Kurt Cobain. And as many people know, he was like the lead singer for Nirvana. And Kurt Cobain, every now and then he would wear like sundresses, but they didn't look quite like this, but he wore sundresses. And so Kid Cudi wants us to believe that the only reason why he's wearing this dress is to pay tribute to Kurt Cobain. And I just think that that's bullshit, man. Just to be blunt, that's what I think. Because you can pay tribute to somebody without wearing a dress. You can pay tribute to somebody by, in many ways. You could redo one of their songs. You can show their image and all that kind of stuff. You could even dress in other ways that the artist dressed or whatever to pay tribute. But no, this guy decides to put on a dress. And this is a part of the overall agenda to emasculate the black man. And you see it time and time again. Unfortunately, this is not some isolated situation. I did a video about that guy, Lil Nas X, where I pointed out how you have all these examples of all these black male rap artists wearing skirts. And I'm going to show these to you. So you got all these examples, like Young Thug wearing this dress right here. Kanye West. You got this guy right here in a dress. Here's another example of a black man dressed up like a woman. Another artist with a skirt on. You got Will Smith's son with a skirt on. You got these examples, and I showed this before, where you got Kanye West again. You got Vin Diesel in a skirt. And you got Diddy with a skirt on. And you got this example of CeeLo Green. This is not an accident. This is not some coincidence. This is a part of an effort to emasculate black men. That's what it is. Hip hop was one of the few art forms that was unapologetically about promoting black masculinity, black machismo. In a lot of the rhymes, it was talking about, concepts of black manhood, about, projected images of what it means to be a strong black man. But that has been replaced with stuff like this. Like this example with this guy with a dress on. All of these examples. And when I see these examples, all I think about is, what Dave Chappelle said when he did this interview on Oprah, where he talked about this idea of these you know, the people that were behind a movie that he was in, trying to get him to wear a dress. And he talked about how this is basically he was talking about how it's a part of a conspiracy to emasculate black men. It's a part of this gay agenda that we see constantly. And it reminds me of buck breaking, where you had these men that are traditionally all masculine and stuff like that. The art form was a masculine art form where black men talked about all these women that they have and how strong they are and all this and that. But then they're breaking down this one area of black manhood and breaking these guys down, just like a prisoner breaks down another prisoner and makes that prisoner his B word. That's what's happening in this hip hop thing. And I just think that it's a disgrace. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this this interview with Dave Chappelle, and hopefully you all can hear it. I'm sure many of you have seen this before, but this is not a coincidence. I refuse to believe that it's a coincidence. I mean, right before this, you had that Lil Nas X situation, which I'm going to touch back on in a second. But let's play this video.
I mean, I'm a conspiracy theorist to a degree. Like when I connect dots that maybe shouldn't be connected, I don't know. But certain dots, like when I see that they put every black man in the movies in a dress at some point in their career, I'll be connecting them. They're like, wow, these brothers gotta wear a dress. This happened to me. I'm doing a movie with Mark. Yeah, the movie's going good. So I walk in the trailer. I'm like, man, this must be the wrong trailer because there's a dress in here. They come in. The writer comes in. I think he's the writer. He's like, Dave, listen, you got this hilarious scene where Martin's sneaking out of jail. So he disguises you as a prostitute. And he put this dress on. And I'm a prostitute. No, I'm not doing it. I don't feel comfortable with it. That should have been in the discussion. What? You don't feel comfortable with it? I mean, it's a hilarious bit. All the greats have done it. So, well, all the greats have done it. It's kind of hacky, right? You're right. So why don't we just not do it? Because I don't feel comfortable wearing a dress. Oh, come on, Dave. Listen, we got it all set up. We're supposed to shoot. Every minute you waste costs this much money. No, the pressure comes in. He said, I'm not wearing no dress, man. I'm funnier than a dress. Just give me something funny to say. I don't need to wear no dress to be funny. I'm Milton Berle. You know, we're going like this. And then finally it's like, and he leaves. And then like the director comes, Dave, it really would be great if you wear the dress. What's wrong? What is this? Brokeback Mountain in here? So wear the dress. I don't want to wear the dress. I want to wear this dress. You know what I mean? Oh gosh, it's so difficult. They leave. Now the producers comes, come on, David, would be so great. I mean, and then I started thinking about it. All the comics that I've seen, man, you know, strong brothers, why they put us in these dresses? But the minute it was clear, I was adamant, I'm not wearing the dress. I'm not wearing the dress. All right, fine. Think of something else. That comes back 10 minutes later. The whole new scene. Damn, how did you write the scene so fast? You know, it's like, so you gotta take a step.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But you all get the point. All these famous black comedians, you know, wearing dresses and stuff. Then you got all these famous black rap artists wearing dresses. And then, like, you know, with respect to that Lil Nas X situation, while a lot of people were condemning him on social media, mainstream media was defending him. Mainstream media was talking about how bold he was, how courageous he was, how unapologetically queer he was, and all that kind of stuff. Basically painting this satanic, flaming homosexual as some kind of role model, as some kind of profile and courage and stuff like that. This is the how twisted and how distorted this society is. And I was reading the comments to this video, to that picture of what's his name, Kid Cudi, and I saw that people were defending him there. And you see this a lot. You see a lot of times these people defend the indefensible. They make excuses for stuff that is inexcusable, and that's what happens time and time again. And it's just a shame, man. It's a shame that this is what society has come to. It's a shame that hip hop is basically dead. As Nas said, where quality hip hop is like really pushed to the margins, and these people that promote this effeminate, soft image of the black man, they're elevated, they're given all this attention and all this praise and all that kind of stuff. And, I noticed that some people were talking about how this was possibly some kind of humiliation ritual and all that kind of stuff. I don't know much about that. I don't have any evidence on that kind of stuff. But all this kind of stuff, like, plays into a lot of these conspiracy theories about the Illuminati and stuff. But I'm really interested in what people think about these stories. So I'm going to look at your comments before I go to this last story, and it's about DMX. So let me just check real quick to see if there's any comments. Yeah, it's just a shame. Like, yeah, Def Rocker said if people were gay back in the day, they didn't disclose it and stuff like that. And it's like my whole issue is not with somebody's private conduct, like choices that people make as an individual. It's just like I'm concerned about this agenda, where something is like pushed hard on our young people. The young people are the ones listening to this music more so than older people who aren't going to be swayed one way or the other, who are already grounded and stuff. It's the young people that I'm concerned about. Like all those young people that were listening to Little Nas X, for instance, at those elementary schools. I showed you the video of him performing at an elementary school, and a whole auditorium full of kids. They all knew every single word from his, that country rap song that he has. And it turns out that song is, in that song, he's singing about getting high off lean and all that kind of stuff. And you got all these kids singing along to this stuff. Yeah, so that's my concern. That's why I raise it. And the last issue that I want to deal with is DMX. I should have done this as a separate video a while ago, when I first heard the news, because, DMX is an icon. And I'm going to share this article with you all real quick, read a few excerpts from the article. So this is the article about DMX's death. This is Double XL. This is a horrible situation. This brother DMX dead at 50 years old. That's relatively young. And this article has a statement from from Def Jam and Russell Simmons. Wait, let's see. Yeah, it's Def Jam. Def Jam released a statement on him. And Def Jam, that's where he was signed. That's where he got launched his career. And it goes on to say this. It says DMX was a brilliant artist and an inspiration to millions around the world. His message of triumph over struggle, his search for the light out of the darkness, his pursuit of truth and grace brought us closer to our own humanity. Our thoughts and prayers are with him, with his family, and all those who loved him and were touched by him. DMX was nothing less than a giant. His legend will live on forever. And I agree with that. Like in my mind, like DMX was one of my favorite hip hop artists. Back in the 90s, he was dominant in hip hop. He had 2 number 1 albums at the same time. And his music was gritty. His music was also, it was also multi-dimensional in many ways. Like, in some ways like Tupac's, like where he would have songs about, prayers, where he was literally dealing with his demons, confronting his demons, literally in song, and also dealing with angels and God and all that kind of stuff. Very deep type of rhymes. A lot of his rhymes talked about the street life. He exuded the kind of masculinity that we see that's missing in hip hop today. That he exuded everything that's contrary to what I was just talking about with these effeminate, soft rappers out here, running around in skirts and running around with purses and all that kind of stuff. He represented the opposite of that. He represented sincerity. Like he was a person who spoke from the heart. When he did interviews, he didn't say the political thing to say. He said what he felt. He called out the industry. I was watching this clip of him on TikTok where he was talking about the industry and stuff, and how how a lot of these guys basically get exploited by the industry and would do anything to get on and anything to be famous, even if it's at the expense of their own manhood and their own dignity and self-respect. But he used, more graphic language than that. But you get the idea. He was an honest person. Like if he didn't like a rap artist, even if they were super popular, like Drake, he was asked about Drake and he said he didn't like Drake and all that kind of stuff. So he was an honest person. And, I was watching this thing on TikTok where somebody was like, blaming DMX for his situation, attacking him, basically saying he decided to use drugs and all that kind of stuff. So that's, basically, oh, well. And this is my response to that. I mean, first of all, you have to understand that DMX was tricked into using drugs when he was only 14 years old. There's an interview that he did with Talib Kweli, and he talked about how this guy that he looked up to as a mentor tricked him into smoking crack. So what the guy did is he rolled up a blunt and he laced it with crack. And, DMX, he was talking about how he had never used any kind of drugs at that time. He never smoked or anything. But this one time he tried this blunt. He smoked this blunt and it was over at that point. He got this experience with crack. And ever since then, he's been struggling with, addiction issues and stuff. And it's like what people want to do is criminalize drug addicts instead of being focused on giving them the help that they need so they can save their lives. So they're saying that he died from an overdose. So the article says that his death was announced on April 9th after reportedly suffering an overdose that resulted in a heart attack. And then DMX's team released this statement. They said, "We're saddened to announce today that our loved one, DMX, birth name of Earl Simmons, passed away at 50 years old at White Plains Hospital with his family by his side after being placed on life support for a few days. Earl was a warrior who fought to the very end. He loved his family with all of his heart, and we cherish the times we spent with him. It goes on to talk about how his music inspired countless fans across the world, and it goes on further. But yeah, it's just a terrible situation. And I saw some people speculating that he may have died from, taking the COVID vaccine, but I haven't seen any kind of proof of that, so I won't buy into that. It's just a tragic situation. I mean, this comes like shortly after DMX did the verses with Snoop. He did verses with Snoop and all that kind of stuff. And he also did an interview on Drink Champs, with Noriega from the group Capone and Noriega. And he talked, one thing that was like really eerie about that interview is that DMX said that if he were to die today, then he would be able to say he lived a good life, basically. And it's just so eerie that like shortly after that interview, he ended up passing away. And that just makes me think about the power of words, like how the words you put out here can actually affect what happens to you. It can define your reality and stuff. So yeah, I mean, DMX was like one of my favorite hip hop artists. One of my favorite albums is the one, I think it's called "And Then There Was X." And the other albums that he had, like, I've been a big fan of his music, since back in the 90s. He's had guest appearances on so many classics, classics like Money, Power, Respect, classics like If I Had 24 Hours to Live. So many classics. So let me just check something real quick. Yeah, that's the album. And then there was X, and then he has Blood of My Blood, Flesh of My Flesh, and so many other classic albums. And I would encourage you all to check out his music. He was a complex brother, a flawed brother, but, a real brother. And, that's something that I can respect. So, much respect to him and his family. I send my condolences. May the brother rest in peace and power. And his legacy continues. So may the brother rest in peace and power. So before I go, I want to see what you all are saying. See if there's anything I should respond to. And I know this live stream is longer than I usually do. But I'm glad y'all hung in there with me. Much respect. So, again, I encourage you to rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. And I encourage you all to come to my art show. It's called Revolution on Canvas. I have posted the link to the invite in the chat. It's free. There probably will be some art for sale. None of the pieces dealing with police brutality will be for sale, but I have other art that will be for sale, and I hope that you all can support it. So if you're in Baltimore, come out on October 9th at 3 p.m. And also the exhibit will be up through November 7th. And I will try to make an online option available. Once I have that information, I will post it here on YouTube. So with that, peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video. Hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content. Peace and good night, everybody.